Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, we're going to talk about quite a few things. I got a lot of information over the last day or so, day and a half since the last update that I want to discuss. Some of it I put in Discord, some of it I tweeted, but I want to discuss it in more detail with context and talk about what's some sort of breaking out today. So I'm going to summarize what I said when I get started and then talk through all of the different pieces because it relates to the Glazers, to cash at the club, to the difficulty United are having with deals, to the problems that are going on behind the scenes. Not that it's all negative, but why things are moving a little bit slower, as they tend to, than we always want them to be. So let's get right into it. And the first thing is about the Glazers and cash, but let me summarize. I wrote this in Discord yesterday. Ten Hag pushing for Mount deal to go through, waiting on people from above. That bid was put in, of course, this morning, as per David Ornstein. Now, an interesting part here is that the bid went in for lower than I know for sure United are capable of doing or interested in doing. That's not necessarily a bad thing, though. We'll get to that in that section. There are issues with getting major sales approved or specifics on what would be acceptable for senior players who are on significant book values based on FFP considerations and things like that. Ten Hag and Murtaugh don't want to rule out a big striker signing, but concerned they won't be able to get to it, hence the more affordable targets. Ten Hag personally pushing for Hojlund. Disagreements within at the board level, stalling on the deal and the briefs about the price of 100 million, when it's really believed that the price would be more in an attainable range of 50 plus add-ons. United slowing it down. We're going to talk about all of why on this in a minute. It is absolutely the desire of Erik ten Hag and the scouts, analysts, people at the club to replace David De Gea. It's been that way for some time. They are concerned they will be pushed into a financial decision to keep him. The juggling of budgets and funds versus approvals and timings, it's confusing. And at the moment, Erik ten Hag would prioritize Hojlund, Mount, and a goalkeeper, but would like to get in sales as many as possible to get a striker or even Rice. I put this in yesterday, but those are not totally going well. So let's talk about it. First and foremost, what is the major issue United are running into here? Because it's not necessarily about budget. There's a slightly more complex factor. And this is why I've said in the past, United don't really operate off of the budget. It's a bit more broad. The amount that they can spend under FFP has never been the problem. So there's not a fixed or defined budget. What the problem is right now is cash. Okay? It's cash. And I'm going to talk about two things with the Glazers and cash. Number one is, as far as I've been told, the Glazers are well aware of the fans' concerns over the delays in timing and things like that. And this should come as no surprise. They do not care in the slightest about it. They do not care what effect it is having. They do not care how it is affecting fans. They do not care about that at all. Their only priority is to ensure that they get what they need out of the club. And by what they need, I mean what they want. And it's not 100% confirmed what it is that they want. But that's the thing. And so in terms of cash, here's the problem. Obviously, one of the reasons United are up for sale is because of the financial issues. It's not because they don't have revenue. It's not because they don't have these things. It's because they have this debt and they don't have the cash to fund things that have to happen. United have healthy revenues. The football club can fund itself pretty well. But there's an issue now, which is as of last year, by the end of the year, United had something like 300 million in transfer payables. Over 150 million or so is due by July 1st, 10 days from now. Huge amount of the transfer deals they accepted were requiring large payments up front rather than installments spread over a nice 5-6 year period of time. United's balance sheet, their books that are available, did not reveal a healthy cash situation. So the problem we're running into today is that there's no money in terms of actual cash at the club. This matters. It's not an FFP issue. It's not a losses or gains issue because everything's amortized, spread out. But it is a cash issue, and that has to deal with who they can talk to, what the clubs that are selling are willing to accept, and what is viable for them. So let's run through the deals and I'll talk about what's happening with each one because I've received news on different fronts on this. Number one is Mason Mount. As you can see, we've had a deal rejected for 45 plus 5. My understanding is United are willing to do in the range of 50 plus 5, as I put out on Twitter, maybe 50 plus 10, and they do believe that'll get accepted. I think they went in with the slightly lower offer to hopefully see if Chelsea would more engage with them instead of, outright saying it, to put a little more pressure on. Mason Mount wants to move very strongly. And I believe that they're seeing from this, based on what Ornstein and Matt Law and others have said, that Chelsea are a little bit flexible. They want to move Mount on since he wants to move on. And that they're willing to budge a little. They're not just going to sit at 80 million or something like that. So I think they'll budge, and I think we'll end up with a deal around that 50 plus 5 or 10, or maybe just ending up 55 flat, and that'll get Mason Mount done. They're engaged in the discussions now, so I think it'll be a little bit quicker, and it'll get to about where United think it'll be and about where we expect it'll be in the first place. And don't forget that Sammy Mokbel, who revealed it first after our information, but first among the journalists, said that 55 million was probably the price, and I think it's going to end up around there in the end. Why is it that United will not walk away from Mason Mount, or why I firmly believe they won't? The exact point I just mentioned, and it's what makes dealing with Chelsea a bit useful in terms of in terms of United working with them, and why they're a good person to work with, a good club to work with on a deal like this, and what makes it viable. Cash. Chelsea are cash rich. They have cash. They have FFP concerns. They don't care as much about the terms of the deal in terms of installments and things like that. So if United even end up paying 55 million, it's going to be 10 to 12 million in cash over the first 12 months. Not a big payment plan, easy to structure, not going to likely be a holdup on the deal. They don't care about it. That's the issue, and why Mason Mount is more likely to happen by far than any other deal. It's a small amount of cash outlay. And I do expect this will happen. Mason Mount, would be kind of set to return to training after the first week of July. United want him to join up with them. He wants to join up with them. They should be engaged in discussions. It should move a little quicker now because they're not just bid, rejected, no, not talking. It's closer. Usually things are a little closer than they seem. Both parties seem open to some compromise. Obviously, United saying what they're going to say about not wanting to overpay. They have a limit, but that limit is a little higher up than where they are now, not by much, and they do expect Chelsea will, bend, but they don't want to make it too easy. In terms of Declan Rice, I put out something on a tweet on July 4th June 4th about the plan, which was make an offer or check in on Kane quickly, then move, get Mount done. Look at Declan Rice, maintain talks with Rabiot, who it's been confirmed they've been talking to Rabiot still, or that there's some contacts with Rabiot still. Make an offer perhaps for Rice as well, and then move on as well to someone like Hojlund instead of Kane. That's all playing out as it should. Now, yesterday I said that, it's a complicated situation with this, with all the budgets. So what's the deal with Rice and West Ham? So United are offering players because, of course, they cannot afford the 90 million plus that West Ham want. And West Ham, as revealed from the offers from Arsenal, don't want that 90 million over 5 years, 6 years. They would like it much sooner. Again, a club that needs cash. And that's what makes the deal for Rice very difficult as well. Now, here's why players make sense for United and the state of play at the moment. If you sell McTominay for 30 million, you may only be getting 5 million cash this year. If you put McTominay in a swap for 30 million, you're reducing what you have to pay for 30 million. And if the other party, in this case West Ham, doesn't want it over 5 years, they want it over 2, you've reduced what you're going to pay out by 15. So by putting him in a swap instead of selling, you may have gained significantly in terms of reducing how much you have to spend in cash. Same with Maguire. So if United could get it down to 50 million plus those 2 players, or 45 plus those 2 players, and get it over 3 years, then it's only 15 million in cash outlay for a player like Declan Rice, and you get those wages off replaced, but it's decent. It's decent. It's affordable. Will it happen? Probably not. United, as I understand it, feel that not optimistic about this. Still, it's Arsenal viewed strongly to be favorites for this still at this point in time. One thing I have been told this morning is David Moyes is a bit more open to this deal than the West Ham hierarchy. Really likes McTominay, would take the players. Obviously, he is not as worried about the cash aspect of it. He would take both players, but is very interested in Scott McTominay. So there's some hope here if Arsenal stall, if Arsenal play, that this may not be wrapped up in the next week or so for Arsenal, and United could stay in the game. But it's all going to be about those player swaps because they cannot afford the cash. Okay? They cannot afford a big cash outlay. If you think about even 150, 200 million budget or amount that they could spend, realize that they're looking at that. They may only have 40 to 50 million in cash on hand. They cannot blow 25 on Declan Rice, or 30 million of the cash on Rice on a big deal. So 10 to 12 for Mount cash in the first year is probably realistic. If they can get a deal down for Rice to 10 to 15, they'll still have money for a striker and potentially more based on, goalkeeper sales, things like that. So that's the situation with Declan Rice. When it comes to Hojlund, this is a little bit more complicated. My understanding is that there's a rift between Manchester United board and Erik ten Hag over this. There's disagreement on this front. Erik ten Hag and the agency SEG, who Hojlund is signed with, essentially pressed ahead on this deal and started lining it up, kind of on their own, not totally approved by the board in terms of the terms. And what's the problem with it? Well, the problem is pretty simply, usually with clubs like Atalanta, Italian clubs, they're going to want more money up front. So even if there's a deal for 50 million euros, one of the things I've been telling people is that usually when United brief kind of a crazy fee like 100 million, and it is because it's gone up from United side to all their journalists, where on the selling side they're saying it's cheaper. That's unusual. When they do that, they're usually trying to backpedal or slow down a deal. And my understanding is that the reason for this is the terms of the deal for someone like Rasmus Hojlund are not bad, but they're not favorable financially, where they want more upfront, and the United board is not necessarily willing to sanction 30 or 40 million upfront, even on a 50 million deal. Even if it's a good deal, they're not necessarily willing to sanction that, and that is causing issues. Erik ten Hag and John Murtaugh are in two minds on this. They're on the same page, but they're of two minds at the moment because they don't want to throw everything away and close the door on a big striker later in summer, especially if the takeover completes or moves forward. Issue again with cash, United have this big credit facility. But if they increase the debt on this credit facility, it's unclear how that would affect the takeover. Is that cash coming out of the sale of the club? Probably. So why this is the Glazers. Why would they spend 50 million in cash on a credit line when that's going to come out of their pocket on the sale? Or they're going to have to ask the buyers for more to increase their valuation, another 50 to 100 million to cover it. It's tricky. The debt thing and wanting to draw down debt or increase debt amidst a takeover is a problem. And so it's confusing here. It is confusing here what exactly United want or Ten Hag and Murtaugh want to do. They're a little bit caught of two minds on the striker thing, and that's why you see it a bit on the back burner because they're having trouble getting the Hojlund deal approved by the board in terms of the finances, but they also could get a bigger striker later. There's kind of three tiers of potential striker signings. There's the Kane, Osimhen, Ramos, and the issue with Ramos is that even at a more realistic fee for a very good striker of 80 million euros, Benfica want the money up front mostly for that lower fee. And so, again, cash. So it's a challenge. The second tier is then like Hojlund, Jonathan David, as I've heard, Balogun potentially. Then there was Ollie Watkins, I think would fall in that tier. More affordable with decent terms, but not necessarily the best players. And then a third option that is a possibility is a cheap short-term signing with Mason Greenwood returning. And there is a possibility of that. I'm not saying it will or won't, but that's a possibility. It's on the table. And a lot of that is down to the takeover. If the takeover is moving forward, there might be a way to work out an agreement to spend on that credit facility or cash to improve the situation. But otherwise, they're going to have to wait for other sales and get more cash in to increase the cash that they can spend on transfers this year. Complicated. It's very, very complicated. So the Hojlund deal, the thing is, it's not 100 million, but they are slowing it down. It essentially was going and then stopped, and it could be still had for around 50 million with plus some add-ons. It is just simply an issue of if there's cohesion on getting this deal done, and there isn't at the moment. So I think you'll see Mount pressed on Rice, see if there's anything in this swaps plus cash offer to completely rebuild the midfield, and then they could let go of Scott, obviously let go of Fred, try to move on Donny van de Beek to raise some more cash as well to potentially help with funding the other deals. But it's a mess, and it's a mess in that, you know, there's a lot of disagreements kind of behind the scenes with Ten Hag and people and what's available and the funds and the slowness and the approvals, and it's difficult. Even the sales are difficult. The whole communication line between the board and Ten Hag and Murtaugh is difficult at the moment. Moving on to the goalkeeper section. Let me see if I hold on a moment. Sorry, I just got a message. 1 second. Anyway, let me see. Sorry, something I just got messaged. I might not be able to bring up on this video, but I'll have to look into that. You know, Ten Hag needs a win, and that's why I don't think they'll walk away from Mason Mount. And again, the cash situation with Chelsea. Yeah. So in terms of the goalkeeper, again, I've been told in no uncertain terms, they want a new goalkeeper. You've seen a lot of confirmations on this. They want a number one. What's the problem? Cash again. Take one like Diogo Costa, who's the first choice of the club. They're trying to get that fee down, but the issue still remains the cash outlay that it would take, where they're going to want more money up front on the deal like that for Diogo Costa. Now, the issue that they're having is that nobody else is really interested, with Chelsea sticking with Kepa for Pochettino. That's been reported by their tier ones. They're not likely to buy a top goalkeeper. Tottenham looking for Raya or moving elsewhere, but it's one they could come back to. And so in the meantime, they're talking about Onana. Now the issue is, what do Inter need in terms of cash? Are they in a situation where they're going to need 50 million euros for Onana up front? It's an issue. This is complicated. I mean, this is complicated, and this cash problem becomes an issue. And there's concern with Ten Hag and with Murtaugh that they're going to be pushed into having to accept a deal, accept De Gea staying on reduced wages because they cannot afford the cash for another keeper. And they're trying to delay as long as possible to see if they can get to it, because they also can't miss out on Mount and these other things. So it's a little bit of a mess. And this is what I was referring to in a tweet yesterday, is that it's messy. It's not that they're not working through things. This is not really on, you know, Ten Hag and Murtaugh and not being able to progress on things the way that they want to. It's messy. It's a messy situation because of things that are outside of their control, and the issues that come with it. So, and obviously a big part of that is the takeover being not completed, so they're not able to adjust in terms of cash, in terms of money, in terms of spending, and all of that in a flexible way that they should be able to. So it's very, very complicated at the moment. So it is hard to say what's going to happen next. My understanding is they're going. Ten Hag is absolutely insistent to get Mount done, and that should happen. We'll see how West Ham react to Rice, and if Arsenal quickly improve their bid to get it accepted to shore United off. Obviously, if so, then United are going to be looking just to sell if they can quickly to raise more funds. I think that if they cannot get Rice on this deal, they'll get a goalkeeper in pretty next, and then they'll continue those sales while they try to figure out this striker situation, because, you know, players like Victor Osimhen, Ramos will still be there in a few weeks, or a month, and potentially Hojlund will too. And if by then they have more clarity on finances and budget, then it'll be more likely to occur. So I hope I've tried to sort through the noise a little bit. I hope it helps understand kind of what's going on and all the kind of, you know, everything being juggled at the moment. This is what it's like for United managers and directors in dealing with the Glazers and with dealing with the way that this club is run, and especially exacerbated now because United are pretty cash poor, and it's debated whether or not the board will approve or sanction any spending on this credit facility because of the takeover process. Okay, so thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. I'll see you in the next one, and I'll definitely update as soon as I hear anything else on any of this quickly, because some things could move rather fast. Okay, talk to you later.